Welcome back to the Global and the Granite State podcast, a program of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to engage with these conversations so far this year, and I look forward to another insightful discussion here with you today. I am honored to have listeners in 71 different countries, building a truly global community that has gained key insights into critical issues from trusted expert sources. In a day where it can be hard to find in-depth, factual conversations, the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire aims to center itself at the forefront of these types of global conversations. If you do not yet know, I am Tim Horgan, and I am the Executive Director of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire, as well as your host for this podcast. In our 5th year of hosting this podcast, I cannot thank everyone enough who has supported this work. From our members to our donors and sponsors, your support is key to continuing to provide a platform for the conversations you have come to enjoy so much. If you are able, please visit our website at wacnh.org to consider donating to our cause or joining us as a member. Every donation helps, and we truly appreciate the support. A special thank you goes out to McLean Middleton, our longtime sponsor of this podcast. McLean Middleton is one of New England's premier full-service law firms with over 100 attorneys throughout offices in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. McLean Middleton's attorneys have been providing trusted legal services to businesses throughout the region for over 100 years. Learn more at mclean.com. All right, on with the show. In July of 2021, the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire had the honor of hosting a delegation of members of Parliament from Ukraine. They came to the state through the Open World program, a federal exchange funded through the U.S. Library of Congress. While here, these members of Parliament had the opportunity to meet with government officials, nonprofit leaders, and everyday Americans to talk about best practices in government accountability. We had an amazing time getting to know these leaders and learning more about their country. A year later, one of the members of Parliament, Nataliya Pipa, returned to the state, but under vastly different circumstances. A few months prior to her return trip, Russia had invaded her country. And while the main thrust of the invasion had been repelled, the people of Ukraine had a long fight ahead of them. Nataliya was here to thank the people of the United States for their support of her country and to update people about the war. Now, 2 years later, we spoke with Nataliya via Zoom days after the U.S. government officially approved a $60 billion security package that will provide Ukraine with artillery rounds, air defense systems and munitions, radars, unmanned aerial systems, tactical vehicles, small arms, and various types of ammunitions. While this will not immediately turn the tide, it will certainly shift the balance of forces in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Yes. God bless America, and all American taxpayers, because it is not money of government. We understand clearly that it is like money of American taxpayers, and how important it is that when America has this leadership in the world.
This is Nataliya, a mother of 2 teenage sons who has served as a member of parliament since 2019 from the city of Lviv in the western part of Ukraine. When I spoke with her, she was very appreciative of the support the United States was providing her country in the fight against Russia and what it means for the people she represents, especially the children.
Yes, I'm a member of parliament, but my biggest proud is mother of 2 sons. And I want to describe a little bit what is life of children in Ukraine. And normally you go to the school with 2 bags. One is for lessons and other is for bomb shelter with additional clothes and with some biscuits and something like this, water and something like this one. And I sent a video where today we have a problem that some new missiles are very quick from Crimea to Kyiv. For example, in just 2-3 minutes that our sirens have not enough time just to on siren. And our children must, when missiles is already in Kyiv or in the sky on Kyiv, to go to bomb shelter. It is like something new that happened. It is very difficult for feeling of this child, especially, and parents too. Me, like mother, it was very difficult to see it, but our children have resistance to go to school, to have friends, sometimes have a birthday party or something like this one. We try to have the same life like all people on the planet, but just we must be prepared to the missiles attack every moment. We must to have everything for it, like medicine or something like this one. And today we have a problem that our energy infrastructure, especially infrastructure for heating, is destroyed. And we have a few months to rebuild it, but we need air defense. And I want to thank you, people that still are with Ukraine and the state how important it is. And I want to thank you, American Parliament and government, because to renew our energy system and heating system, we need air defense. It is something that will be in this help and support that we have today from USA. And thank you that government of USA help Ukrainian army, and people still a lot help Ukrainians, because like victory is not yet. We must work a lot for it.
While there is a lot of debate over whether or not the United States should continue to support the Ukrainian military, let's get a baseline of facts here. First and foremost, the vast majority, some estimates put it between 80 and 90%, of the money allocated to support the Ukrainians has been spent right here in the USA to either replace the weapons sent to Ukraine, first prioritizing munitions that were going to expire and needed to be destroyed, or to produce new munitions to send to the Ukrainian military. Pallets full of cash are not being sent to Ukraine to allow them to buy whatever they want. The United States has also not provided a blank check to the Ukrainian government to do with as they please. It has been over a year between aid packages, and these bills have been very specific in what they will provide. Now, it is also true the U.S. has provided the largest single source of support for Ukraine. But when you total up the entirety of European Union dollars, they have us beat, before this latest package. The final point is about the global concerns about corruption in Ukraine. Transparency International pegs the perception of corruption in Ukraine as high, ranking it 104th out of 180 countries. For context, the United States is number 24, tied with Barbados. And Russia is ranked 141, tied with Guinea, Kyrgyzstan, and Uganda. Of note, Ukraine has significantly increased its position in the past 11 years, posting gains in the ranking each of those years since the Maidan Revolution in 2014. Nataliya points to another reason why people believe corruption is so bad in Ukraine.
The moment the war helped us to have less and less corruption, because we see that a lot of people that have problem with law are at the moment in jail and prison. It is different like in Russia. And we see that a lot of weapons that goes from USA or monies or other funds that go from US and other countries, you can be clear and you can see at every moment what happened with it. But like still Russian propaganda understands that cannot to speak that Ukrainian are weak, speaks about the Ukrainian are corrupted.
Particularly important, given the efforts that Russia is actively undertaking to undermine Western support for Ukraine. Now, this does not mean there is no corruption, or that every dollar, every munition, every contract has been accounted for as well as it should have been. It is unsurprising that some level of corruption in military contracts has occurred, not only for the history of corruption of the country, but also because of the sheer size and speed of the military ramp-up. In 2021, Ukraine was spending about $6 billion on its military, of its own money. The budget number for 2024, again, of Ukraine's own money, is $42 billion. American military thinker and author Edward Lutwak wrote, "And it would be astonishing if there were no fraud at all when so many billions change hands for the purchase of a million different things." However, this was not written about the Ukraine buildup. It was rather written in 1982 as President Reagan was trying to gain support for the U.S. military buildup that he saw was necessary. So, as we consider an ideal world where no corruption exists, we need to remind ourselves that corruption will forever exist, and it is our duty and the duty of governments to root it out, hold those accountable, and put in the safeguards necessary to minimize it. The final thing I will mention here is that the U.S. Pentagon has certified there is no credible evidence that any U.S. advanced weapons have been diverted from their intended use, although it has acknowledged that over $1 billion worth of equipment has not been properly tracked, meaning there is no evidence that this lack of oversight has led to the illicit diversion of these munitions. All right, with that out of the way, let's set the scene for what life is currently like in Ukraine, now in its third year at war. I will preface this by saying Nataliya sent me a heartbreaking video of young children running for a bomb shelter while at school as air raid sirens blare in the background.
And when you go normally to Kyiv or Lviv, you will see quite normal and nice picture, because you will see people that drink a coffee, work in the office, go for a walk, but normally have 2 bags, medicine to go to bomb shelter, and especially something that you cannot to see how many losses we have already, because it's no person in Ukraine that has no personal losses. It can be father, it can be husband, it can be son, it can be your classmate, your student mate, or something like this one. For example, 7 persons, very close my friends, and that for today I know of children's. I try to keep in touch with these families. It is something that you didn't see, but others looks quite normal. But some infrastructure objects are very bad, and the difficult situation is on front line. And American intelligence at the moment that in the end of April is on the beginning of May, when is Russians' day of victory from Second World War, will try to have a new points and places in Ukraine under Russians' control. But still, our business try to work. Our economy try to work. We have at the moment in Ukraine one of the biggest education reform, because I work in education committee. It is very close thing for me, and we try to make some high school how it is in USA very close, because till today we have old style high school, and we try to make reform at university. It is about effective use money and make our knowledges and be more competitive. And it is like lives go on. Our economy is weak, but try to do the same with people that are mentally more weak than it was before this big invasion. But really, we have to be resilient, have to do next step.
This effort to lead normal lives does not extend to the entirety of Ukraine, as life in the western part of the country, which is subjected to missile and drone attacks, is much different than the eastern part of the country, where entire cities lay in rubble.
Yes, that situation is quite different, because some part of Ukraine is occupied, and there are still some people that not every person of it want to be of Russian control. But for example, when you have some person that is very ill at the home, you cannot move, you must stay to be there. We have some siren signal, and we know that we have 3, 5, 10 minutes to go to bomb shelter. On this frontline territories don't have this opportunity, because it is like just a few minutes and are very quick. And you see this picture boy from Kharkiv, especially Kharkiv today is in very difficult circumstances. People are there without electricity, just a few hours per day without water, but still are there. And some children too cannot go to the school for normal offline learning. Yes, it's some online, but it is difficult because your mental health is abnormal too. And how you see this boy in cask, but try to make your order in KFC. And Kharkiv is very big city. It's second city after Kyiv. It is near 2 million people. And at the moment it's near 1 million, and are some businesses there too, some coffee, small restaurants, some factories try to work. For example, I like to drink some tea from the Kharkiv that are produced there and other things. And today Kharkiv is a very special city. For me, it is like difficult to tell, but one of the goals of Russians is big city Kharkiv, try to reach Odessa, try to reach Kyiv, try to reach Zaporizhia, but Kharkiv is in a difficult situation for today, and the east side feel it is more.
Beyond how they are experiencing the war, it is important to understand how people's morale is holding up. It has been 3 years of war, and Russia has recently been making advances as Western support has waned. One of Ukraine's biggest advantages in the struggle remains the draw of protecting one's homeland and the vigor in which their military is willing to fight. So, how does Nataliya feel that her fellow countrymen feel about the future of the war and their ability to liberate themselves from the Russian invaders?
Honestly, feelings are different because people are different. And some understand that our victory is when Crimea will be back. For others, victory is to have a state and to have freedom. And today, more and more people understand that for us it's very important to stop Russians at the moment we don't have occupied new territory, but have a state and try to go on reforms, try go on business, and people that take more to analysis understand that this war will be not so short because it is war about different vision of life. Especially it is very close to American people because Ukrainians, like Americans, like freedom and democracy. Constitution of USA is very close to Constitution of Philip Orlik state. This document is almost on this time, and I know that some people that try to work with this constitution with Philip Orlik work after that on Constitution of USA. And we have this freedom, and we still are fighting with Russia for this freedom and democracy. And this war is about it, because when Soviet Union is broken down, when Ukrainians go out from Soviet Union, because Ukraine was second on the most important part of Soviet Union, it was no war. This war is today, and a lot understand that it will be, and understand that war starts at 2014, and so many people don't know that it was like peace agreement, Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. It was in 2014, but for Russian all time, the peace agreement was about nothing. Russia understands just power. And this is something that some part of American government understand, and some people from two different parties in America understand that Russia understands just power. And today, Russia understands power of USA and power of China.
One of the things that people who are opposed to the continuation of U.S. support for the war in Ukraine cite in their reasoning is that we don't want to be engaged in another forever war that drains U.S. resources. With the front lines remaining somewhat static over the past year, they claim that this is evidence that both sides are evenly matched at this point, and only a negotiated solution where Ukraine gives up some of its territory can bring an end to this war. I would point out that the lack of U.S. funds coincide with the loss of territory experienced by Ukraine. With the addition of longer-range attack missiles and other munitions, Ukraine will be able to retake the initiative and begin the hard work of pushing back. To me, this shows the importance of Western support, but also that the Ukrainians will not just give up the fight if U.S. support evaporates. Therefore, any claims that this war can or will be resolved in a day, a week, or a month is fantasy. So, let's take a look at how this does eventually come to an end. Is a fully political or fully military solution even possible?
It must be both, because for political negotiation must be before a military conclusion, all right? At the moment, Russia thinks that it's very powerful, especially we have this 6 months almost without weapon. And Russia think, okay, USA is not so powerful and will not help Ukraine. We can do everything that we want. And it is the reason why we'll be in the May, have a new Russian army will go to Ukraine. But the moment USA shows leadership in the world, it will be for Russia not so simple. And see that Ukraine not fallen down for 3 days. And that normally people don't wait Russians here and want to see Russians here. And first of all, will be military way. At the moment, we must save borders that we have today. And after that, from weapon and from number of people, we see when this border will be, because Ukrainians are less and less, but all that are strong enough to go and go. I speak before about our electricity systems, that we have a problem at the moment, and we will have problem with heating from October and November. And we are preparing at the moment that we will have this electricity just a few hours per day. It was before it. We try to have a wood and home when we can heating by the wood to go in one home and have families, but survive. And this military moment will be very important. And after that, political, especially political leadership in the world, other countries shows Russia where will be placed.
I think we can safely say that Western, mainly US-led support is vital to Ukraine's ability to win this war. I am not aware of anyone who denies this. Rather, that seeing Russia defeated in Ukraine is not a core national security issue for the US, is their root of their calls for why the US should end its support. However, there is a historical reason, beyond the moral and self-interested reasons, that we should continue to support Ukraine.
It was very difficult to understand how it can happen, because the biggest problem was on the beginning of Ukrainian independence, when USA government don't believe that Ukrainians are quite good partner and our all nuclear weapon gives to Russians. It was the biggest mistake. And we know that from this time, USA government, I understand what USA government at the moment, that Russian, we know what is it, we know these leaders, we know how to collaborate with it. What is Ukraine? We don't know. It is like new country and better nuclear weapon will be Russia. It was the biggest mistake, because the moment when know more about character, Ukrainians and Russians understand it is very different nation, and try to have a leadership with Ukraine and collaborate with nuclear power, with nuclear weapon, it better with Ukraine like with Russia. And very common feeling we have at the moment, because when we speak about USA, we know how powerful the state is, what was agreements.
The US and Russia worked together when the Soviet Union collapsed to send the nuclear weapons that Ukraine had back to Russia. The Budapest Memorandum, signed by the United States, Ukraine, Russia, and Britain, pledged to respect Ukraine's territorial integrity and the inviolability of its borders, and to refrain from the use or threat of military force. Now, it is pretty clear that Russia has completely blown up the agreements that they signed on to, but the United States, so far, has lived up to its assurances that it would respond in the face of Russian aggression. While no definites were put into place, it was made clear to the Ukrainians that in recognition that they were giving up their own biggest security guarantee, that of the third largest stockpile of nuclear arms in the world, that they would retain the assurances that their country would remain integral and full. So, for anyone who is concerned about the ability of the US to create future agreements with partner countries and to limit the proliferation of nuclear arms, it would seem to be in the US's interest to make good on this commitment to help Ukraine retain its own borders and send a strong signal to the world that wars of conquest will not be successful if you just wait long enough for the US to lose interest. So, what was the reaction in Ukraine with the US finally passing the most recent package of support?
Okay, maybe my son, at the moment 16 years old, maybe will be happy and will be lucky and don't go to the war. It is very difficult when you have two sons. And for example, my husband is teacher. It is reason why at the moment is at the school, but not on the front line, because we all time think how many people we can protect. Because normally, when you see normal Lviv with some cafes or something like this one, we go very often to funerals. And our military cemetery, it is full. It is very difficult because it is the standard, not just soldier. It is husband, father, and something like this one. And when we heard about people, we said, will be not so many people killed, and we can survive. And thank you, America and American taxpayers. Thank you. It was with crying. I was a little bit crying, because we wait for it so long.
In the end, while this tragic war continues to rage today, it is important to remember that there are complex issues, signals, messages, and consequences of all actions. When the U.S. signals a weakness for supporting a country like Ukraine in its defensive war, other countries take notice. When the government shrinks from a challenge, it sends a bad signal that our interest in the world is limited and conditioned on a very narrow set of national interests. However, when the government rises to a challenge, signals strength and resolve, as well as upholds longstanding commitments, the world becomes a better and safer place. Not perfect by any means, but safer. Again, by continuing to supply Ukraine with the weapons they need, and not needlessly delaying the types or amount of munitions they can have, we do not prolong the war and the death. In fact, the only one who can truly shorten this war is the one man who chose to start it in the first place, Vladimir Putin. He can make the decision to end his war of choice at any time he chooses. He can command his military to stand down and end the fight. Heck, he could even do the smallest thing, such as having his military stop attacking civilian infrastructure. If you believe that is not possible, then you must believe that they're really bad at targeting actual military targets.
For example, in Lviv, we have situation that by the night from the 31st December till 1st January was broken museum of a previous Ukrainian general, Roman Shukhevich of Ukrainian army that was very strong. And it's no military object in this area. It was correct on this museum. And it was especially by the night 1st January. It is like very symbolic. And others, for example, that we can see that when in some area is no military object, but are destroyed civilians objects. For example, this missile attack that you can see on this video that I sent, it was tried to reach school of Zelensky's sons, because the school is very close to this building. But was just a few meters difference between this other civilians object to destroy it, but try to destroy the schools where a son of Zelensky and other member of parliament and governments, for example, go a lot different children to the school, not just children's member of government. And something like this one, and we know that try to reach different factories where we try to produce weapon by try, because sometimes it's very difficult, because a lot of Russians give still today in Lviv too some small factory where we try to produce drones or to produce other military weapon, but are sometimes just very symbolic or just in big Ukrainian buildings where there are a lot of people.
At the April 11th meeting of the UN Security Council, Ukraine's representative indicated that their assessment of the nearly 11,000 missiles, drones, and guided bombs launched by Russia have hit targets of military use only 3% of the time. Now, we can assume that this number may over-exaggerate, as many of the battles have taken place in cities where dense populations and multi-use buildings exist. But what is clear is that over 10,000 civilians have been killed and another 20,000 injured as a direct result of Russian attacks. For a war that was supposedly started, at least in part, by Russia's desire to protect the people of Ukraine from their own government, it is hard to see how these two things jive. Finally, I personally don't see the argument that if we don't stop Russia in Ukraine, that a NATO country is next, as a particularly robust theory. If Putin has this much trouble against Ukraine, what chances does he have against a united and expanded NATO alliance? With the assumption that all allies will uphold their Article 5 commitments of collective defense. However, there are other countries that are already experiencing military problems with Russia. Whether it is Moldova seeing its breakaway region of Transnistria supported by the Russian military, Putin already showing a willingness to invade neighbor countries like Georgia and involve himself in civil wars in other countries like Syria. Preparing for the worst while working for the best is perhaps the best path forward. But at the end of the day, the United States and its Western partners do not have a final say in how this all plays out, unless they are willing to engage in a full military assault, which then would not even agree a particular result, and is not anything I'm personally calling for. This will only be decided when one side or the other says they have had enough. Just because the US drops support for Ukraine will not bring an immediate end to the fighting. It is up to Ukraine to decide when they have had enough, and it would be hard to see how a demoralized Russian military is not in our own national interest. Whether or not that is achievable is very much up for debate, and it is up to the electorate and the people who vote to represent them in the US government to decide what kind of world we want to live in. One where the weak are at the mercy of the strong, or one where a strong set of like-minded allies provide a strong deterrent for wars of aggression, in the way that we saw from 1990 until at least 2014. Before wrapping up, I wanted to give Nataliya the opportunity for some final thoughts.
First of all, really, I want to thank you because I still feel the support of some Americans. We are different. In Ukraine, at the moment, is not the same person that was before big invasion. We almost don't have a savings, for example. All our money we give for drones and for Ukrainian army because we understand that it's not about money or drones, it's about life. And thank you, every person that understands it too. Help us to survive and to protect democracy and normal life. We have ecological big challenge. We have very big challenge of TikToks, of gadgets. Our children think at the moment in other way, don't communicate the same way like we, and we have a lot of challenges. A challenge word is the most dangerous because it is about physical living. And I not just hoped, I strongly believe that peace will win because we see it is in the history of our world that somebody who started big war was stopped by very often by different countries. And I hope that this day will be the same. And we have a problem with Russia and with China a little bit too. And very important to show that a world can communicate. I really thank you that in New Hampshire, I feel almost in the second home after Ukraine. And this feelings where I was in New Hampshire was amazing for me because I don't think before it that we are so similar or something like this one. And thank you for your big heart, your humanity, and protect like common and open interests.
Thank you so much to everyone for engaging with this conversation and taking the time to understand the conflict, the importance of Western support, and that this war continues to have real consequences for the people of Ukraine. This, of course, is not the only place in the world facing the challenges of war, including the Israel-Hamas war, the civil war in Sudan, Syria, Yemen, Ethiopia, Myanmar, along with a host of other countries in all regions of the world. These all require the world's attention and care. It is the goal of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire to shed light and provide context where we can. We hope to continue this work and continue to bring engaging conversations to the forefront. Your engagement and support are vital to this goal, and we thank you for the ways you have made our work possible. This has been The Global and the Granite State, a program of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. Tim Horgan is your producer, director, host, audio engineer, researcher, fact-checker, scriptwriter, and whatever else needs to get done. As always, our theme music is Admin by AA Alto, and our interlude music is Price of Freedom by Good Bee Music. Thanks again for taking the time to listen and engage. Hope to hear from you next month.